Angelito Grace. I remember his face. He was born like pretty early, like 21 weeks, and yeah, he looked like his dad, which was so cool.
Welcome to Still a Part of Us, a place where moms and dads share the story of their child who was stillborn or who died in infancy. I'm Winter.
And I'm Lee. We are grateful you joined us today. Please note that this is a story of loss and has triggers.
Thanks to our lost parents who are willing to be vulnerable and share their children with us.
If you're listening to this podcast, just know that on our YouTube channel there are pictures and videos that are related to the stories that are being shared.
Subscribe and share it with a friend that might need it, and tell them to subscribe. Why? Because people need to know that even though our babies are no longer with us, they're still a part of us. Katy, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a long time coming, and I'm so excited to chat with you today about your sweet little Angelito. Thank you again for coming on.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Katy, we love to always get to know a little bit about the people that we're chatting with. So tell us a little bit about yourself and what your family looks like and where you guys are located and all that good, fun stuff.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Seattle area, Washington State, and I met my now husband 7 years ago. Well, I didn't meet him actually. We started dating 7 years ago, and we met 4 years prior working on cruise ships. We worked for Holland America Line. And we were friends for a while, and then just met and our worlds collided, and he moved to Seattle, and it was just a very felt right kind of thing.
Yeah.
And 3 years ago, actually coming up on 4 years ago in January, we decided to move to Puerto Rico. His mom was living here at the time. And as well as he has other family that lives here as well. So we just felt like it was the right thing for us. You know, we wanted to change, and it's definitely been an adventure and been really good for me personally, because I'm not a super flexible person, and Puerto Rico just forces you to be flexible because like power outages, hurricanes, you know, it's like it demands flexibility, but there's so much beauty here. It's just such a magical place, and a place I've felt so much healing through the last 4 years, and especially this year as well. And so we wanted to get pregnant beginning of 2021. We tried for about 7 months to get pregnant, and got pregnant early September of 2021.
Okay.
It was the first month I did the pregnancy test and left it on the counter and went to get something else. I wasn't thinking about it. I had actually started a new job as a nanny to 2 twin girls, and I was just not, my mind wasn't as consumed with getting pregnant. And of course, you know, that's when it happened.
Yep. Least expected.
And I had already, you know, I'm kind of a researcher, like to do my homework type thing. And so I had already known what I wanted to do with like my birth, and we decided on a midwife group that's here. They're wonderful, and they are able to do a home birth for us, which was our plan.
Awesome.
Although we also they work with an OB, so an OB comes into their practice and does an OB visit, ultrasounds, that kind of thing, orders blood work. So I loved the care model because, you know, we knew that if we had to go to the hospital, we would have our OB there. And my pregnancy was pretty good. I mean, there wasn't much to report. Even the nausea, like I had nausea weeks like 7 to 9, but it wasn't, I mean, gosh, I hear of a lot of women who have it so rough.
Yes, exactly.
And it wasn't that for me. It was just kind of eating saltines and rice and, you know, all that for a few weeks. My sister-in-law was actually pregnant at the same time I was. She was 2 months ahead of me, and she had really, really bad like morning sickness until I think it was like until maybe even halfway through her second trimester. It was so I was like always really grateful for that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for sure.
yeah,
I would be,
yeah.
yeah, it's, yeah. When you see somebody just ahead of you, you're like, oh, I hope it's not that bad.
I
So,
know, right? I know. Yeah, she had a really she had a really rough first, for a few months.
yeah. Now,
And
when you went to the midwives, did they, how early, I just am not totally sure because you're in Puerto Rico and
yeah.
I don't know how they usually set up care and like when people start going in for their appointments and such. Because I think
Mhm.
usually, like in the United States, it seems like it's around 8 or 9 weeks or something
Yeah.
like that, and just check it out, make sure everything looks okay. Is that kind of similar with the
Yeah.
way care
Yeah.
usually happens in Puerto Rico?
I think we went around 6 or 7 weeks just to talk to the midwives, like
Okay.
just to establish care.
Yeah.
And it wasn't much, they couldn't do too much, but they could actually at that appointment hear my like placenta with the Doppler.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, oh, that's your placenta. I'm like, what? So that was really cool.
Yeah.
But they didn't have like an ultrasound machine. So when the OB came in, he would then have the
Okay.
ultrasound machine with him.
Gotcha.
And they were simply there to talk to us, hear what we want for our pregnancy. And then at 9 weeks, I believe I had my first ultrasound, which she
Okay.
like looked like a gummy bear,
Yeah.
so cute, so,
Yeah.
so funny. And I was so nervous for that appointment. Just like, is it everything okay? Cause you're just like,
Yeah.
it's your first time. I'm just like, what? This is, the first time for me. And I was just like, is something actually growing in there? Like you just, yeah, your brain doesn't connect, I feel like, really until you see something tangible.
Yes,
So,
exactly. It is so bizarre because you're like, maybe something's happening. Yeah. Yeah, I
yeah.
totally agree
Is it
with
all
you.
in my head?
Yeah.
Like, yeah. And I even had like a blood test and stuff that said I was, but I was just like, really? Like, I don't really, especially after trying for a little while, you're just
Yes.
like, really? Is this real? But yeah, in fact, he was moving around with his little tiny little arms and legs, and everything was looking good. Got to hear the heartbeat. It's
That's
very
awesome.
emotional,
Yeah.
very special, and I still
Yeah.
have a video of that, which is very treasured.
Yeah.
Of that moment, thanks to my husband.
So he was able to be there and
Yeah, so
okay.
Nick was able to be there for everything for me. So I
Awesome.
should just say that now because I do remember you asking that along the way. So
Yeah.
yeah, eventually in the hospital and then for all the appointments, he was able to be there. And I did ask him to be there for every appointment, even the ones that were like just checking me because it's
Yeah.
just the first time, and you're just like, I get a lot of white coat syndrome with my blood pressure, and so
Oh,
like I would get so nervous, and then of course then the blood pressure gets worse and worse. So he would like help calm me down and just kind of like help me feel safe and explain like, we've been tracking her blood pressure at home. It's fine. Like she's just really, that kind of thing. Because
that is
here,
so good.
yeah, like everyone here, not everyone here, but people that we worked with all
Mhm.
were bilingual.
Mhm.
Most of the people. So
Yes.
like our care team was all bilingual, but I don't speak that much Spanish and Nick does because he grew up here ages 5 to 10.
Oh,
So
okay.
in my opinion, he's fluent. He would tell you, I'm not fluent, but he is,
Yeah. Yeah.
he can make do with most situations,
Yes.
So that's been super helpful in my story. But the midwives all, spoke English and were just so caring. And I love the midwifery model of care.
Mhm.
It's not rushed and it's just very kind. I feel like I just was taken care of and seen.
That is
And
great.
that was really important. So then we had another ultrasound. We had it like, I think midwife appointments every 4 weeks.
Mhm.
Some were virtual because like one time there was like a exposure to COVID for someone. So they're very, very safe here. So they like just
Yes.
shut down. They're like, we're going to just do all of our appointments
Yeah.
virtually.
Okay.
And they actually gave us a kit so we could like do a Doppler at home,
Oh.
and thermometer and the whole doctor kit, if you will, to take with us so that when we have those appointments, they could be like, okay, like, can you use the Doppler and just check the heartbeat?
That is
Yeah,
awesome.
it was really cool. And we
Very
did. So we would be
yeah.
like, oh, how's the heart? He was, I knew exactly where his head was on me. Like it's such a cool thing because I still kind of like feel it there. And I'm like, oh, I missed his head being like, he was actually breech most of the time. So his head was like kind of up on my right side, and we would, put the Doppler there and it would just immediately like catch on when I was a little further along, obviously. I think I was like 16 to 18 weeks when we did it at home.
Yeah.
And then 18 weeks comes along and we, was it 18 weeks? Anyway, something like that. And we had another appointment for an ultrasound. And I remember sitting in the waiting room, and we had a really long wait because something happened. One of their technicians wasn't there. So the doctor was doing the ultrasounds and the visits, and it was a 3-hour wait. It was very long.
Yes.
So, but I remember I finally got a good reading for my blood pressure. He was like swimming around in me. I never really felt him kick. It was more of the quickening, I guess they call it. But I could just feel him just like moving around. And I was like so happy. It was just like, I can just feel him moving, like he's doing fine. And so, I got the ultrasound, which is a very treasured picture of him because we didn't want to know the gender yet. So we had him just do his, torso up, but just a sweet profile of him. And he looked fine. Everything looked great. The doctor didn't say anything that, was alarming. He's like, everything looks good. And so,
and that was around 16 to 18 weeks.
Yeah, that was like, so that was date wise, it was January 18th, we had the ultrasound. And on February 1st, we found out, he was no longer alive.
Yeah.
So,
and that was in 2022. I just want to kind of give everybody some, a little bit of guidance on
January 2022. Yeah. Okay. And so the next appointment we had was our anatomy scan, which was with a whole nother doctor. It was with a high risk OB, not because I was high risk, but because, it was here, appointments can run late and it's just a different model of care. And my midwife said, she'll be on time. You'll like her. Okay, great. So I'm used to appointments being a little more on time, being raised from Washington State. Yes. So she was like, you'll appreciate this. I was like, great. So I was 21 weeks and I don't know how many days, honestly, it all kind of gets kind of blurry, but I was 21 weeks and a few days probably. And we went in and we didn't want to know the gender. We were like, we wanted to wait till our baby was born to know the gender. And my focus was making sure he was healthy. So some people walk into their anatomy scans and they're like, oh, I can't wait, we're gonna find out the gender. I was more I've always been into birth and healthy pregnancies and all that stuff. Yeah. So I did know there are other things that can show up on anatomy scans. So never did I think he was not alive, but I did have a moment I just looked back on it date wise, but it was about a week or so before our scan. I was on a walk with the little girls that I nanny, and they were young. They were 1.5, and they're in a stroller, and it's hot. It was hot that day. And I hadn't drank a lot that morning. I'd eaten, but I hadn't drank a lot. And I was pushing them in the stroller and going on a walk. I was about 5 minutes in, and I felt so lightheaded, and I don't really pass out easily or anything.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's weird. And my heart was racing. My heart was 160 beats a minute.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. And I sat down and I chugged water, and I called the mom of the twins, and I said, you need to come get them now, and I need to go home. And so it's one of those moments that you, as anyone does that's lost a child, you kind of look back and think, I wonder if that was the day. Because my body was off, and I did end up feeling better, but I remember telling Nick, we should check his heartbeat. And he didn't have one. But I wasn't really thinking he is dead. I was thinking, I'm still pretty early. It's hard to find the heartbeat sometimes when you're early. And I didn't really, and I also had the anatomy scan just maybe 4 or 5 days later.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, we're just, I didn't really think much of it. And I was feeling okay after that. I thought, oh, I was just dehydrated. But it's one of those moments you look back on and you just kind of question when that was, when did this happen? And so, so going back to the day of the anatomy scan, there was the technician, that scans you first, and then the doctor comes in.
Yeah.
So she was showing us his, legs and all the parts, except for the one part we didn't want to see. But, and then she said, let me just text the doctor. And we're like, okay, like not thinking anything of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the doctor walks in, and there was a mom, her baby's name, I wrote it down because I want to make sure, give her a little shout out, that was on your podcast. Her son is Jason Matthew, that you did just a few episodes ago from where we're at now.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she said the same thing that happened to me in the anatomy scan, where the doctor said, like, you see this light, it's supposed to light up. Like, you see this part of him, it's supposed to light up. Instead of saying, like, your baby doesn't have a heartbeat. Yeah. So we're like, yeah. And, it's confusing. And then what broke my heart was that Nick had to ask her, like, are you saying there's no heartbeat? And she's like, yeah. And that just like broke my heart that he had to like say that and ask that. Like, I wish that was handled a little differently. And, that's the moment, right? That's the moment where you're like, I'll never be the same again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In an instant, you are changed. And yeah.
So, a lot of that day is pretty blurry. I do remember before the visit, I was like, I have to go to the bathroom because they say you have a full bladder. And I remember them saying, like, well, you can go to the bathroom now. And I remember being like, why does that matter anymore? Like, I can feel, my body felt nothing. I was just in shock. And I remember thinking, like, that doesn't matter. And it's like, so many things I thought mattered, like, didn't matter anymore. And I say that to people that haven't had losses, and they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, it's like a language of lost parents. Like, you're just like, all that doesn't matter.
Nope.
And so the doctor said, I'm going to meet you in a separate room and we'll talk about it. I'm going to call your doctor. So she called the OB that we've been working with and let him know what had happened. And she said, you're able to get induced tomorrow at 6 a.m. This was like at 2 o'clock in the afternoon the day before. And some birthing people that have lost babies, like, they are like, yeah, sign me up. Like, I want this to be done. I was on the opposite end of the spectrum where everything in my body just said no. Like, I am not ready.
Yeah.
I felt like, for me, I would have had a traumatic birth if it had been rushed. I'm like, I need to process. I need my brain to get on board with my body. Because, like, right now, I'm in shock. Yeah. So I just said, no, I'm not going to do that. And, she said, okay, well, your doctor said you can wait as long as you know the signs for, going into labor or any other signs of infection and stuff like that. I said, great. But they did schedule an induction a week from that day, because that was on a Wednesday and it was the following Wednesday. So I found out on February 1st, 2022. And then we were going to be induced I was going to be induced on the 9th of, that's not the right math. Okay, 8 days later, on the 9th of February. Mm-hmm. So I was happy with that. I was like, that's enough time. But, I really wanted to, like, still have my son inside me and still have time with him before I had to say goodbye completely, And so skipped all the things we had planned after the anatomy scan and went home. And we had Nick's aunt come over. She's like kind of a second mom to both of us. And, she just held us and just said, like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And she was the first person we had told in person. My mom lives for 3 or 4 at that time. I don't remember, but she lives in Seattle. So she was actually at work when all this happened. And I couldn't get a hold of her yet. So yeah, those days are very, time is so interesting when you're going through such dark times. So my mom and I were able to connect that night, and my mom was the one person I needed, and I'm so grateful I had her, because a lot of people don't have their moms. Either they don't have them, they're not able to access them even though they're alive for whatever reason, or they're not here. So I had my mom, and it was the one person I needed, and she just said, I think she was trying not to cry. She was also in shock. So she was just like, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm going to go. And I was like, okay. But upon reflection, it's just, it was because she was, of course, very upset. We're very connected. I'm her only daughter. I'm her first child. And she was really feeling, and again, the pain similar to mine. She's also had losses. So,
she has.
that was a part of it.
Yeah.
But we talked the next day, and she's like, I want to get to you right now. And she had a doctor's appointment that I really wanted her to go to before she did. So she came, I think everything happened on a Wednesday. She came on Saturday.
Oh, good.
And she was able to actually stay next door to us, which was a huge blessing. She was just right there. And so, yeah, my energy was low. You're sad. That's an understatement. For me, it was the darkest week of my life, to find the news, and then also know that I have to birth him. I hate to say it that way, and I don't see it that way, but in the moment I was like, I have to birth him. And the midwives came over after we found out to my house.
Yeah.
And they talked us through some things.
Okay.
They actually had a doula for us. I asked for a doula to help. So in the hospital, we were able to have a partner and another person.
Yeah.
And so we chose, obviously, my husband and this doula. And she's actually a loss doula. So she hadn't actually been part of a loss like this before, but she was knowledgeable and could really hold space. And so, the midwives discussed that we need to figure out what we want to do for funeral plans, which isn't that such it's just I'm not going to swear, but it's a mind, because you're just I was planning the life of my child less than 24 hours ago, and now you're telling me I have to plan the life of the death of my child.
Yeah.
And so our doula, it's the worst. It's the worst. And so our doula was huge in helping. She did everything except for signing things. And, she took care of the funeral thing because we were overwhelmed. And we just didn't want to do that. It was no, someone else do that for us.
Yeah.
So she so graciously did that. I wouldn't think a doula would have those kind of duties, but she was like, I will take care of that. And I will call the hospital, and I'll figure out what you need, and I'll make sure they know, and all this stuff. And so she was really an advocate for us even before we stepped into the hospital.
That is amazing. Whenever I hear somebody that has a kind of a grief doula, I was like, that is so awesome. I wish we would have had one. I think that's so, so good. Did she come over often, in that week? Was she touching bases with you guys?
Doula? Mm-hmm. She came, well, you know what? She only came over that one time, but then we would talk on the phone or text.
Yeah.
She would always check in with me, and just, to be honest, I think she could have been a regular non-loss doula and just been a supportive, because what we used her for was the funeral, and yes, she was there with us in the hospital for a brief period, but she just provided such services that we just need. Whatever we needed, she did. And I'll be using her again, in the future. She's just a wonderful person. And she was like an angel sent to us, with everything going on.
Yeah.
And so she, so anyway, that week, my mom was here for a few days. And then I think it was Sunday evening. I kind of had this feeling. First of all, I was really tired, but also it was just okay, I think I'm ready. I think he needs to be born. soon. And with that came my body listened to that. So my body's like, gotcha. And it looked different than a lot of people might think. So I had increased pulse and increased blood pressure. And so we decided to go to an Airbnb close to the hospital. So this hospital that our OB is at was about an hour away. And so, Nick had booked like an Airbnb for like a week just to make sure it was around whenever things happened for my mom who was in town. And his mom just happened to be visiting for like a month. So both of our mothers could stay there. We could stay there before the hospital when we got induced. Well, that's not how life goes sometimes, right? So we had the Airbnb, but we decided to get there early and they were accommodating. And then my blood pressure just wouldn't go down. And it's so alarming to me when my pulse is like high, like you're just like, something's wrong, especially with that whole walk and how my heart rate was high. So we called our doctor and he said, just come in, like you just come into the hospital. This was, early morning, like 1 a.m. On the 7th of February. So it was 1 a.m. on the 8th of February, which was like, we were supposed to be induced on the 9th. So it was like very close to induction. And so they took me in and, one hard thing is the language barrier with some of the nurses. Like most doctors can speak, both languages well. And, but they kept saying the word abortion when they were referring to the death of my son. And I am, supportive of a woman's choice, but it just wasn't that's not the right word.
Yeah.
And so thankfully Nick, pulled someone aside and just said like, this is not the right word. Please don't use it. I wish there was a little more education sometimes on how to deal with the situation, but my blood pressure, they wanted to test me for preeclampsia, of course. And so, they admitted me, they took an EKG, and they started me on an IV drip to prevent seizures if I did have preeclampsia. It's called magnesium something, and it's can usually make you warm, like it makes your body warm. People sometimes don't like it. Well, it's freezing in those hospitals. So I did not mind. It is so cold, especially because here people are used to warm weather. Like 70 degrees is cold to us. So like if the hospital is 65, we're like freezing. So I didn't mind it, but I did mind that they put a catheter in me. And oh my gosh, they had to try like twice. And I was like, this is the worst. Like it's just so painful. And so for whatever reason, they had to have the catheter in me before I don't know what, in case I had a seizure maybe or something. I don't know. All I know is that I tested negative for preeclampsia and they were able to take that out, which I was very, very grateful for, and stop the IV. Yeah. And so that was great. My doctor came in and he explained the induction process, which for us was cytotech. So the tablets to be inserted, pretty much touching the cervix for, again, time is hard, but, to see if that would my labor would just naturally start.
Yeah.
And so, so he started me with the first round, which was like 2 tablets or something. And it was very painful. Like it was just really painful. Some people are like, they say that so casually on birth stories. And I'm like, is it painful for them? Like it was painful for me. And it felt, my body didn't like it. It felt like violating in a lot of ways, it was like, this is not right. And so the first round started and I contracted, but it felt like a little more than intense period cramping, and it was back to back. My doula came, she was there. She was like, had essential oils and was able to do massage and like all that stuff. And then, about 4 hours later, I would guess, like he's like, okay, we're going to give you a second a second dose because I wasn't doing anything. I was just able to talk, I was pretty much normal. They were intense, but it was like, like a 1, I would say, out of 10.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, they did double the dose the second time, it was a moment where, so he had to twice like put the pills in me. And I remember like looking at Nick and being like, this is the worst. Like, I am in hell. Like, this is the worst.
Yeah.
Like, my baby is dead. I'm being like violated. I feel like, and I have to still like go through the birth process.
Yeah.
Like, I was all throughout, that week, I wasn't scared of like the pain of labor or anything. I was actually really scared. I hate to say this, but to like see what my child would look like, because I was like, he had been passed away, they thought, for about 3 days before, but I think it's a little longer than that. Yeah. And then I waited a week, and so I'm there. The midwife said, like, just to be prepared, like, we don't know what he'll look like, and it's not going to look like a full-term baby. And my focus was, oh my gosh, like, do I want to like see him and like hold him? And I was all consuming. The pain was like, I don't care about that. Like, I just want to know what it's going to be like.
Oh yeah.
And so the second round of Cytotec worked better. It was like a 5 out of 6, back to back. Being induced is hard. Like,
yeah.
Like, I know why people get epidurals. Like, I get it.
Yeah.
Because there's no break. There's no break to come back to yourself and come off of it. Like, and so, that was hard. The doula was there with me. She was like, doing essential oils and massaging me, and even like had a moment where he taught Nick, she taught Nick how to like, kind of put me in certain positions to help progress.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like a very, very mini session of like how to support your partner in birth, because we hadn't done any classes like that. Of
course,
yet.
You were so early. I mean, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, at that point, I was 22 weeks giving birth. And so, what happened was, all of a sudden, everything stopped. Like, my whole body was just like, I stopped contracting. Everything stopped. And this was after, I think I hadn't gone to sleep in, I don't know, it'd been all the day before. And, at this point it was probably around noon on that day. So like I'd been up for well over 24 hours, and my body was tired. And so everything stopped and I fell asleep for like 2 hours, and it was the best. It was the best sleep I've had. It was exactly what I needed. And then my doctor came in, he said, listen, we're going to let you rest for like 14 hours. We're just going to let you rest your body. This has been a lot on your body. And I was like, thank yes. Like, this has just been so exhausting. And he said, we'll resume this the next morning at 9 a.m. So I was like, yes. So my doula left because she was like, I'll come tomorrow morning.
Yeah.
So she left. And my mom was around, because she again was here visiting. And so she was able to come up and be with me.
Oh, good.
Which was really, really special, because I've always wanted like her to be around or with me in birth. And she just like rubbed my back, and she was just so sweet. And all of a sudden I'm like, Mom, I think I'm having contractions. And she's like, I can feel them. Are they like a 4? I'm like, yeah. So my mom is really connected to me. So like when I've had like surgery or something, like she literally feels a pain in her body, like, where I am. Yeah. And so I said, I think you should go get Nick, because Nick was out on a call. And so he came back and my mom left. And from then on, it was a very fast progression. So from that point on, the contractions were what I would say, they're not like induction contractions. They were like normal contractions.
Oh, okay.
But so like my body had kicked in, and so my body knew what to do, which was just like amazing to me. And so for 30 seconds, I would have a contraction, and for 20 to 30 seconds, I would have a break.
Yeah.
And it was like that. It wasn't like, full term, there's more of a progression, but this was just like, go. And so, it honestly gave me a lot of peace of mind because I knew what was going on. I knew enough about birth that I was like, this is normal. And it helped me come back to earth. That 20 seconds was like the best thing in the world because I could then like get somewhere, right? I could be like, let's go to the bathroom, or like, I need this, or that kind of thing, right?
Yes.
And so it was just Nick and I, and the doctors and nurses just said, like, when her water breaks, like, let us know. And I remember hearing that and being like, it's not going to break, and it's not going to break before he's born. I just knew it. I was like, it's not going to break before he's born. So I thought, we're in this by ourselves, man. Like, I mean, we had a call button and everything, but I kind of liked it like that, even though it was a little overwhelming at times. It overall, I'm a pretty private person. I don't really want many people. And of course, when you're birthing, you're just like, leave me alone. So I was able to walk. I had no epidural. The epidurals were not offered in this hospital. So that was something I knew going in. I am definitely not anti-epidural, but that was just, my doctor was there and my doula was able to be there. And that was a good trade for an epidural. Of course, if needed, we could do a C-section, but I wasn't under any pain management. So I, did the things you do in birth that you kind of like I feel like naturally kind of get into, I vocalized, I loved sitting on the toilet. I was able to relax there.
Yeah.
And that is where in just 1 minute, he was halfway out of me. So I had thrown up, which is pretty normal, right at the very end. And then I sat on the toilet and I felt like a gush, and it was the membranes, I guess, upon reflection. And then I felt him like halfway out of me. So he was born breech. And so his legs were out of me. And I remember, Nick yelling down the hall to get a doctor. Yeah. And I had my eyes closed. So in birth, I really had my eyes closed most of the time, especially when I was contracting. So I didn't see much. I was just hovering over that toilet, and my doctor came in. He said, okay, I need you to push. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I hadn't pushed. He's so small. And I didn't have that stage of my labor. And so, I did my best to push, and he came out, and I still had my eyes closed, and all of a sudden it was like all my water, and it went everywhere in the bathroom, all over the floor.
You're totally right.
It's amazing. You're like, how do I have that much liquid in me?
Exactly. Like, it's surprising.
I was amazed. And so Nick walks me over to the bed. And we had a private room, so that was so nice. And my doctor gave me the greatest gift, and he said, you're going to hold your baby now. And I didn't have to decide, it's like, I didn't have to make another decision. It was just, this is happening. And they had this beautiful kind of like crocheted little bassinet thing. It was a soft bassinet. And they handed him to me, and he had a little face that looked just like Nick. And it was one of those moments that we were able to have a normal parent moment. We were able to say, he looks like you. And he was very small. He was only 1 pound and 10 inches long.
Yeah.
And they said, do you want to know the sex? And we're like, oh, well, we called our anatomy scan place like a few days ago. They told us it was a girl.
No way.
They're like, no, he's a boy. We're like, oh, what? Yeah. So, I mean, in that moment, I was like, I don't care what gender, this is my child, right? You hear that all the time yes, gender disappointment is a real thing, and I totally value that. And in that moment, it wasn't as shocking as some people are like, wow. I'm like, it didn't matter. Like, he's my child. And it was interesting how all that happened, but he definitely was a boy. And yeah, I was able to hold him and, I wasn't emotional. I was consumed by peace. Like, I cannot explain it. It was one of the most like spiritual moments of my life. And it's something I would never have thought would come from this type of birth story, but it was a gift I felt his soul gave me.
Oh,
And that peace, it lasted me quite some time. It wasn't just, oh, your hormones, da da da. No, this was bigger than that. And he gave me that. Like that, I was almost, it was, it's how I imagine I'd feel when I die.
mm,
Like, I felt like, as moms, as people that birth these children that aren't alive, like we all do lose a part of ourselves when our baby dies.
yeah.
And I felt like I'd kind of like died, but also like felt this like heavenly energy of like it's gonna be okay. And so that was really powerful for me. And I still ask my son in spirit to give me peace a lot of times. And, he's there. And so we had a very short time with him. I was not delivering my placenta
Oh,
and I was bleeding. Um, and they were worried about that. So they said, we need to sedate you and take your placenta out manually. So, I've learned that they never offered me the DNC, I think is what it's called. I
uh-huh.
don't think that was something that they could do. So, they just said, my doctor said, I'll go in, and I'll remove your placenta and, you'll then we're done, but honestly, at that point, I was so tired that I was just like, great, give me the drugs. Like, and
Yeah.
I really did have peace with our time. I think we were for 2 hours, we were together. We got pictures. Our doula made it
Oh,
after the birth.
oh, good,
Yeah.
good.
But she was able to take pictures for us, which are just so treasured.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so that's what happened. And I woke up and I did have some relief that that was kind of like done. I was still anticipating the birth and everything. But I was kind of like, okay, like now we can just focus on healing, right? We can just focus
Mhm.
on the next step, the next thing. And I'll keep this brief, but the next, and 4 days later, I got a high fever, and it ended up
Oh,
that I had an infection in my uterus from the
oh,
manual. Yeah, so when doctors go in manually, there's a chance that like the bacteria
yes,
in the vagina can get in the uterus. So
yeah.
I didn't know that. Now I do, but I was in the hospital for 14 days. So it was a
After,
very,
oh,
yeah, yeah.
I'm so sorry, Katie.
Yeah,
That's like,
yeah, and don't you just wanna be home? Like, everyone's
yeah,
like, "I just wanted to go home," and I was home for, a few days, but I was very sick, I was very tired,
yeah.
and I thought it was just postpartum, but it was not. It was
It
low
was,
iron from my, bleeding
oh,
and then also the infection, and so, sadly, my mom had to leave. She wanted to be here for me postpartum, but she also got to a point where we were in the hospital for so long that
yeah.
she needed support herself too. She couldn't just sit at our house and wait, like, and she wasn't able to come up. So
Mm.
we did get one day where she could come up and we said goodbye. It was so hard because we both didn't want to leave each other, but it just had to happen that way. And so that was very hard for me. That was, second to obviously the news. It
Yeah.
was it was rough for Nick and I. And my hemoglobin was like a 7. So I was
Oh,
really low.
it's low, people.
I was
That's,
like I have people in my family that are nurses and they're like, yeah, they should have done a blood
oh,
transfusion.
yeah, completely.
And their standards were a six or,
Oh,
and so anyway, it's one of those medical
yeah,
things that
yeah.
can vary. I was getting iron IVs and, antibiotic and saline and all the things. So, my everything turned out okay, but it really did just make it, I wasn't in the healing zone, obviously.
No.
I was like, not even here. Like Nick's like, you weren't even, I wasn't. I was just somewhere else. And it
Yeah.
was so hard for me to be be present with what was going on. I just was almost like in shock and numb. And so, yeah. And so then, I feel like the grief journey, as it never ends, it's taught me a lot. I really hadn't had a loss before this that was this like
This,
tragic. I mean,
yeah.
you can't really compare losing a child, but I hadn't had anyone super close to me pass away unexpectedly. And so this was my introduction into grief. And
Oh,
it,
that's a rough story too. I was like, oh,
yeah,
there's just so many things that made it
yeah, it
just
was really
even
hard.
worse. Like,
It
Katie, I
was.
did have a couple of questions. When you did go on, when you were sedated to kind of get your placenta out, did Nick able to spend a little bit more time with Angelito, or did you guys end up like, okay, you guys kind of both
Yeah.
gave him back to the hospital at the same time, or how did that look?
We both had a lot of peace with saying goodbye as I was also going in to get my
Okay.
procedure. They offered for him to, but they don't have cold cots there, and
Yeah.
he was starting to show signs of being in the
Yeah.
world,
Yeah.
physically, and that's really hard to see. His
Yeah. It
little
is.
skin was drying out, and it it was like it's time. It's hard. And I think he had the same feeling as I did in that moment. So we both said goodbye to him, and I remember the nurse like looking at us like, really, like, you want to say goodbye? Yeah, like we did have that overwhelming feeling, and I expected myself to be, just distraught and like in tears. And some women and men are like that. And
Yeah.
but that wasn't my story. I was just very much like, okay, like, I really felt like my his mission was completed. And I hate for anyone else to tell me that, but that's what I felt. And my brain and my heart don't understand that. But in my soul, I felt like he had done what he needed to do. He didn't need to be like on earth. Like, he was the higher soul than me. He's my teacher.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
every time I think about him, I'm like, he is my teacher. Like, every time it's like teacher, teacher, teacher. Like, he is teaching me so much. And I really had that overwhelming feeling like, okay, son, like, that's what you needed. Like, thank you for letting me be your mom.
Mm.
And this really sucks, and it's not fair, and I don't understand it. But I did feel that in a different level. And so we had a ton of support from our community here and
Yeah.
community elsewhere. And my cousin, I asked her to tell people. So, as a lot
Yeah.
of people have shared, you don't want to tell anyone.
Yeah.
So I'll tell one. I told my mom. I think my mom was the only person I told what happened. And I said, tell everybody, because I don't want to say it. And so my cousin was going to organize my baby shower. And so I asked her to please use that list and then let people know what's going on.
Yeah.
And I said, if people want to help, please tell them they can send prayers. They can write to me if they want. And then we gave our like PayPal, Venmo, and said, if you can and want to, do it. If not, we love any kind of support. Well, this was huge for us. Like, we were able to basically not work for a couple months just because people were so generous. And
Oh,
that really gave us the space to heal, to do the first layer of healing.
yeah.
Especially me, because I was still, recovering, especially after the
Yes.
infection and being postpartum. So it was something really, if anyone's listening and they're like me and they're listening to this before they give birth, like, or even after, like, don't hesitate to ask for help. People will
Yeah.
help how they can,
Yeah.
and everyone's had a different role for us. Some people sent us $200, and then other people had prayer groups for us. Like, it just like, upon now it's been 9 months since he was born. Like, that now means even more to me, because I'm like, wow, I didn't even realize like how loved we are and how supported we are. And so everyone had their unique role in supporting us through that, especially in the early days.
Yeah.
Um, and it
That's
was
beautiful, like, just
just,
how people showed up, like, and
yeah,
it looks very different for a lot of different people, and so I love how, yeah, people showed up, like, they
they did.
Yeah.
And I just, yeah, they did. I really wanted to hermit after everything. You know, I wanted to cocoon and just protect myself. So I didn't let many people in. Yeah. But I'd have friends here who like dropped off a package of food. Like I had another friend that said she has 5 children, and she was like, let me bring you like pre-made meals. Like I can get some from Costco. And like she lives like an hour away, has 5 kids. Like I said, like, thank you so much. Like I'll let you know if I need that. But like just the gesture of it was so touching. And really it was also people that wanted to listen to the story. You know, the story is so important. This is why you do what you do, right? Like it's what gives me, you know, sure, I'm sad, but it brings me a lot of joy to share my child's life. You know, he existed before he died, and we have memories and we have moments, and that matters, you know, that matters. So
it completely does. I think that's so cool. Katy, I actually wanted to ask you how did you guys come up with his name? Because it is really a beautiful, beautiful name, and very, it's very heavenly. All of it is very heavenly.
Angelito means little angel in Spanish. And so the week that we found out that Angelito was no longer alive, we had no idea what name we were going to choose. We didn't even know the gender at that point, really. Yeah. So, and Nick was out in our backyard in nature where a lot of his healing takes place. And he came into the room and he said, I think I have a name. And, you know, Nick is someone that's very easygoing. You know, he's just, I'm a little more of the fiery one, right? And he's more of the go with the flow. And in that moment, I just thought, no matter what he says, I'm going to say yes, because he's like speaking his heart. Like he's like sharing something so special. And I like the name. But he said Angelito, and I said, or Angelita or Angelito.
Oh, okay.
On the gender.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I said, I love it. And I said, I feel like in my pregnancy, I was given a lot of grace from him because I'm very hard on myself, and I would hear him be like, it's okay. Like, it's fine. You ate some Cheez-Its. Like, it's not a big deal. You know, like I can be so hard on myself for not eating the right thing or whatever. Yeah. And that's a small example, but I felt like he gave me so much grace, and he helped teach me grace. And so I picked the middle name. And so that's how it came. And
it's so beautiful.
Came. And I believe our babies like choose their names. So like, I believe that he like told Nick, like, this is what it is. And so, yeah, you know, it's a very special moment. I'll remember exactly where I was when we had that conversation and decided that was his name. We didn't tell anybody until he was born. It's a very, very powerful and special name.
It's beautiful. I just love it.
Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Just kind of following up with some of the stuff that happened at the birth, did they end up seeing anything, or did they have any conclusions on what had happened that caused his death?
So actually at the anatomy scan, she noticed that he had fetal hydrops.
Oh.
Which it's crazy. I was listening to one of your I was watching one of your YouTube videos, and I just clicked on a random one, and it was a woman that had her baby pass away from that, or that was part of it. But fetal hydrops isn't why a baby dies. It's like the hydrops is due to something, right?
Yes,
it's
exactly.
Due to, you know, sometimes it's the mom's blood, sometimes it's a heart defect. So we know it was fetal hydrops, but we do not know why that was developed. We were given an option to do an autopsy. Our doctor said he actually would recommend not doing it simply because they're usually non-conclusive, and they're also not covered by insurance, so they're very expensive.
They are.
And you know, money wasn't the reason, but it was more like, also I hear this a lot with birth stories like this where you don't really want your child to get an autopsy. It's just too hard to think about.
Yeah.
And so that was a part of it for me. And also the doctor saying that, I just thought, I think I can have peace with it. I mean, I think I could be okay not knowing.
Yeah.
And later they also did a test on the placenta. So they checked out the placenta to see if there was anything. There was nothing. It was totally normal. But my doctor did say, like, there also could have been a cord accident we didn't know about, you know?
Mm.
It's just like, they're kind of like, it could be this or that. It could be a virus you had that you weren't sick for, but that affected the baby. Like,
Yeah.
there's so many things. And I'm normally someone that can get very focused on going down the research rabbit hole of things, but this has been something I've allowed myself, and just maybe it's like my son helping me or something, but I've just been able to say, you know,
It
it
happened,
just,
and
yeah, it
it
just
was
happened, and
yeah.
there's no, and there really won't be an answer. And he looked, you know, his everything looked relatively normal when he was born. Of course, at that gestation, they're like, you know, their bones aren't even really that like formed yet. They still
Mhm.
have the, you know, fingers and toes and all that, but you know, he didn't look, his body didn't look super healthy. It was, you know, maybe that was just because he had passed away for a while, but it actually helped my brain understand that he wasn't, something was not right. Like, there was a
Mm.
reason, you know. But we did all the genetic testing, right? We did all that, and
Mhm.
it was all normal. So yeah, I'm in that unfortunate club of, you know, my child passed away and I don't know why, and there's not much I can do to try and prevent it. But high
Yeah.
drops is so rare that it kind of helped me too be like, well, it only happens in like 0.05% of
Yeah.
pregnancies.
Yeah.
So it actually helped me. Like, hearing that stat was like, okay, well, hopefully chances are for the next one,
Exactly, the stat
it
won't
won't
yeah.
happen
Yeah.
again, right?
Mhm.
Like, and what do you do, right? I mean, if you want a child, if you want to have another biological child, you kind of have to just like have faith, right?
Yeah.
You have to just go through it.
You just gotta do
And
it, and it's a miracle when our babies get here. It really is,
I'm very
like
excited for that day.
yeah.
Yeah, we're still on the journey of, you know, trying to conceive, but it's only been about 3 or 4 months since we started to try again.
Mm,
I needed some time to heal, and my body needed
for
some time
sure.
to recover and heal. And I'm glad I took that time. It was
Yeah.
hard because I just wanted to be pregnant just so I could see my baby again,
Yeah.
my new baby. But it's like I needed that time to kind of, I don't know, heal so that I can actually like get excited for the next child to be
Yeah.
conceived. And I can say I'm excited. I can say there are many other things too, but but that excitement is something, and I never thought that would be something I would say,
Yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
in the beginning. So
Yeah. Your body and your mind and your soul need to kinda just be on board for that to to
yeah.
make it feel right, to try again, to have faith and hope that it things will work out. So, Katie, when I know that your doula helps you guys with your like funeral arrangements and all of that, did you guys end up having a funeral or some sort of memorial to Angelito?
We got him cremated,
Hmm.
and he was able to be home with us after my hospitalization.
Oh, okay.
Did we do anything for him? We haven't done anything yet, but we did on his due date. Just Nick and I went to this really beautiful black sand beach here on
Oh.
the island,
Hmm.
and I had a really amazing meditation, and I felt close to him that day, and I have a feeling we'll do something, maybe on the year. So he was born on like February 8th, 2022. So
Yeah.
maybe next year we will. But for now, you know, it's a very, we're pretty private. So we just, you know, things we do are going to be probably pretty small.
Which is good.
One thing I had an idea is to get like a blank, like cloth canvas, and then have the ceremony and have people like paint on the canvas, like
Oh,
whatever they wanted. And it would be like a collaboration of like just pieces of art, and we can like hang it in our house.
that's so fun.
So we'll see. But for now, that's good for us, and
Yeah.
he's with us here, and that feels good to have his ashes here, and just feel we have a couple altars for him too that just symbolize his life. And I have my pregnancy test that's super old now, but it's just there.
Yeah.
And, other things, we actually had people contribute to the altar if they wanted. So we said, if you want to send something, we'll put it on his altar.
Oh,
And
cool.
so, like, to honor him for you too, to have you be part of this.
Yeah.
This was the first grandchild on my mom's side of the family.
Oh.
And so this was her first grandchild, although my sister-in-law was pregnant as well and gave birth to a beautiful little healthy baby girl in April. He was the firstborn. And so, we want our family to feel included in that grief process and that honoring of him.
Yeah. He's part of the family too, and that
Yeah.
makes that's part of the family line too. Yeah, it just affects you. You
Mm-hmm.
don't realize it, but it does. So
Yeah.
oh, Katy, that was really so fun to hear about
Yeah.
Angelito. I mean, fun is
Mm-hmm.
not the right word, I don't think, but it was
I
great to hear
understand.
because I feel like your perspective, and I really resonated with the peace that you had. I think that was
Mhm.
so what a blessing, what a gift from your son to have
Mhm.
that after his birth. I think that's really, really special.
Yeah,
So
and I think, like, I'm glad I honored my no in my body that said, "No,
yeah,
I wanna wait," because I do feel like that was part of the reason why.
yeah,
I had that really hard, well, gosh, no words for it really, but that really dark week, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and just, like,
yeah,
cry, and Nick would just hold me, and it was just the most I've ever cried in my life, but I was able to really feel that and
yeah,
not have to be in, like, this mode of, like, survival mode. I was able to really feel it,
yeah.
and that to me was one of the reasons why I think my birth was what it was.
Right. Yeah, your situation is so unique. The decision you made was really quite unique from what we've heard here on this podcast, and so I am grateful for that perspective because yeah, there's kind of this little bit of panic, right? There's like this panic and anxiety when you're like, okay, let's just do it now. I just don't want to,
Yeah.
like, but to kind of be able to grieve, but also be with him too. Like there was
Yeah.
something kind of cool about that. Like,
Yeah, it was really special. Like, and to like how crazy that we're like birthing death. Like, it's such a weird
it,
process to go
yeah,
through. And
yeah,
I was holding death with me, but I'm a pretty spiritual person. So I was like, I know he's still with me. Um, but I needed to hold on to him,
yeah,
until I felt
yeah,
some kind of switch to release him. So
yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. It
yeah.
just is super, super powerful. So, and thank you again for taking the time to talk with us today.
Yeah. Thank you.